Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Jason and Catherine, and Lori is about to jump in here. Here she comes back. She fell off for a second. Here we go. And today we are going to continue our discussion of The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And we are on page 217 at the section titled Lost in the Library. And but before we get going, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves. And for those of you who are watching, we'd love for you to give us a like and share this video with anybody you think would find it interesting or helpful. So go ahead and do that. And all right, guys, go ahead and jump out. And then Catherine, if you want to read, you can. Where's my mute?
Yeah, hey, glad to be here. Give us a like, give us a share, stop in sometime. I'm looking forward to the reading and hearing more about Midnight Library.
You appear to be unmuted, Lori. I think you're good. Can we hear you? Can you hear us, Lori?
Give us a shout out, Lori.
I think you're unmuted. So oh no, it says connecting to audio. Must be a signal issue. Oh, there we go.
It's snowing there, so she may have signal on her phone.
Or it could be fumble fingers.
There you are. We hear you now. We just can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, brother.
Oh, now you're muted again. Oh, there you go. Oh, muted again.
With the mute and video things right next to each other, it's just so hard for her to get one or the other without the other.
Oh, here. Let me try this.
She's using her phone.
Try that. Did the button pop up for you, Lori? Maybe. There you go.
There you are.
Yay. Oh.
There she is. Well, Lori's here with us.
Oh, dang it. She showed up again.
They turned out the lights.
There you are. There we go. Now we see you. We should be able to hear you.
All right. Introduce yourself.
Nice.
Lori Evans in Denver.
All right. This is Catherine Clement, and I do the reading, and we'll start at Lost in the Library. Mrs. Elm. Yes, Nora, what's the matter? It's dark. I had noticed. That's not a good sign, is it? No, said Mrs. Elm, sounding flustered. You know perfectly well it's not a good sign. I can't go on. You always say that. I have run out of lives. I've been everything, and yet I always end up back here. There's always something that stops my enjoyment. Always. I feel ungrateful. Well, you shouldn't. And you haven't run out of anything, Mrs. Elm paused to sigh. Did you know that every time you choose a book, it never returns to the shelves? Yes. Which is why you can never go back into a life you have tried. There always needs to be some variation on a theme. In the Midnight Library, you can't take the same book out twice. I don't follow. Well, even in the dark, you know these shelves are as full as the last time you looked. Feel them if you like. Nora didn't feel them. Yeah, I know they are. They're exactly as full as they were when you first arrived here, aren't they? I don't. That means there are still as many possible lives out there for you as there ever were. An infinite number, in fact. You can never run out of possibilities. but you can run out of wanting them. Oh, Nora. Oh, what? There was a pause in the darkness. Nora pressed the small light on her watch just to check. 000000. I think, Mrs. Elm said eventually, if I may say so without being rude, I think you might have lost your way a little bit. Isn't that why I came to the Midnight Library in the first place? Because I had lost my way? Well, yes, but now you are lost within your lostness, which is to say, very lost indeed. You are not going to find the way you want to live like this. What if there never was a way? What if I'm trapped? So long as there are still books on the shelves, you are never trapped. Every book is a potential escape. I just don't understand life, sulked Nora. You don't have to understand life. You just have to live it. Nora shook her head. This was a bit too much for a philosophy graduate to take. But I don't want to be like this, Nora told her. I don't want to be like Hugo. I don't want to keep flicking between lives forever. All right, then you need to listen carefully to me. Now, do you want my advice or don't you? Well, yeah, of course. It feels a little late, but yes, Mrs. Elm, I would be very grateful for your advice on this. Right. Well, I think you have reached a point where you can't see the wood for the trees. I'm not quite sure what you mean. You are right to think of these lives like a piano where you're playing tunes that aren't really you. You're forgetting who you are. In becoming everyone, you are becoming no one. You're forgetting your root life. You are forgetting what worked for you and what didn't. You are forgetting your regrets. I've been through my regrets. No, not all of them. Well, not every single minor one. No, obviously. You need to look at the book of regrets again. How can I do that in the pitch dark? Because you already know the whole book, because it's inside you, just as I am. She remembered Dylan telling her he had seen Mrs. Elm near the care home. She thought about telling her this, but decided against it. Right. We only know what we perceive. Everything we experience is ultimately just our perception of it. It's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. You know Thoreau? Of course, if you do. The thing is, I don't know what I regret anymore. Okay, well, let's see. You say that I'm just a perception, then why did you perceive me? Why am I Mrs. Elm, the person you see? I don't know, because you were someone I trusted. You were kind to me. Kindness is a strong force and rare. You might be looking in the wrong places. Maybe. The dark was punctured by the slow rising glow of the light bulbs all around the library. So where else in your root life have you felt that? Kindness. Nora remembered the night Ash knocked on her door, maybe lifting a dead cat off the road and carrying it in the rain around her flat's tiny back garden, and then burying it on her behalf because she was sobbing drunkenly with grief wasn't the most archetypical romantic thing in the world. But it certainly qualified as kind to take 40 minutes out of your run and help someone in need while only accepting a glass of water in return. She hadn't really been able to appreciate that kindness at the time. Her grief and despair had been too strong, but now she thought about it. It had really been quite remarkable. I think I know, she said. It was right there in front of me, the night before I tried to kill myself. Yesterday evening, you mean? I suppose. Yes. Ash, the surgeon, the one who found Volts, who once asked me out for coffee years ago when I was with Dan. I'd said no, well, because I was with Dan. But what if I hadn't been? What if I had broken up with Dan and gone on that coffee date and had dared, on a Saturday with all the shop watching, to say yes to a coffee? because there must be a life in which I was single in that moment and where I said what I wanted to say, where I said, yes, I would like to go for a coffee sometime, Ash. That would be lovely. Where I picked Ash, like to have a go at that life. Where would that have taken me? And in the dark, she heard the familiar sound of the shelves beginning to move slowly with a creak, then faster, smoother, until Mrs. Elm spotted the book, the life in question, right there. A pearl in the shell. She opened her eyes from a shallow sleep, and the first thing she noticed was that she was incredibly tired. She could see a picture on the wall in the dark. She could just about make out that picture. It was a mildly abstract interpretation of a tree. Not a tall and spindly tree, something short and wide and flowery. There was a man next to her, asleep. It was impossible to tell as he was turned away from her in the dark, and given that he was largely hidden under the duvet, whether this man was Ash. Somehow this felt weirder than usual. Of course, to be in bed with a man who she hadn't done anything more with than bury a cat and have a few interesting conversations from behind the counter of a music shop should have felt slightly strange in the normal run of things. But since entering the Midnight Library, Nora had slowly got used to the peculiar. And just because it was possible that the man was Ash, it was also possible that it wasn't. There was no predicting every future outcome after a single decision. Going for a coffee with Ash might have led, for instance, to Nora falling in love with the person serving the coffee. That was simply the unpredictable nature of quantum physics. She felt her ring finger. 2 rings. The man turned over. An arm landed across her in the dark, and she gently raised it and placed it back on the duvet. Then she took herself out of bed. Her plan was to go downstairs and maybe lie on a sofa and, as usual, do some research about herself on her phone. It was a curious fact that no matter how many lives she had experienced, and no matter how different those lives were, she almost always had her phone by the bed. And in this life it was no different, so she grabbed it and sneaked out of the room quietly. Whoever the man was, he was a deep sleeper and didn't stir. She stared at him. Nora, he mumbled, half asleep. It was him. She was almost sure of it. Ash. I'm just going to the loo, she said. He mumbled something close to an okay and fell back asleep. And she trod gently across the floorboards. But the moment she opened the door and stepped out of the room, she nearly jumped out of her skin. For there, in front of her, in the half light of the landing, was another human, a small one, child size. Mummy, I had a nightmare. By the soft light of the dimmed bulb in the hallway, she could see the girl's face, her fine hair wild from sleep, strands sticking to her clammy forehead. Nora said nothing. This was her daughter. How could she say anything? The now familiar question raised itself. How could she just join into a life that she was years late for? Nora closed her eyes. The other lives in which she'd had children had only lasted a couple of minutes or so. This one was already leading into unknown territory. Her body shook with whatever she was trying to keep inside. She didn't want to see her, not just for herself, but for the girl as well. It seemed a betrayal. Nora was her mother, but also in another more important way, she was not her mother. She was just a strange woman in a strange house looking at a strange child. Mummy, can you hear me? I had a nightmare. She heard the man move in his bed somewhere in the room behind her. This would only become more awkward if he woke up properly. So Nora decided to speak to the child. Oh, oh, that's a shame, she whispered. It's not real, though. It's just a dream. It was about bears. Nora closed the door behind her. Bears? Because of that story. Right, yes, the story. Come on, back in your bed. It sounded harsh, she realized. Sweetheart, she added, wondering what her daughter in this universe, was called. There are no bears here, only teddy bears. Yes, only. The girl became a little more awake. Her eyes brightened. She saw her mother. So for a second, Nora felt like that, like her mother. She felt the strangeness of being connected to the world through someone else. Mummy, what were you doing? She was speaking loudly. She was deeply serious in the way that only 4-year-olds, she couldn't have been much older, could be. Shh, Nora said. She really needed to know the girl's name. Names had power. If you didn't know your own daughter's name, you had no control whatsoever. Listen, Nora whispered. I'm just going to go downstairs and do something. You go back to bed. But the bears, there aren't any bears. There are in my dreams. Nora remembered the polar bear speeding towards her in the fog, remembered that fear, that desire, and that sudden moment to live. There won't be this time, I promise. Mummy, why are you speaking like that? Like what? Like that? Whispering? No. Nora had no idea what the girl thought she was speaking like, what the gap was between her now and her, the mother. Did motherhood affect the way you spoke? Like you're scared, the girl clarified. I'm not scared. I want someone to hold my hand. What? I want someone to hold my hand. Right. Silly mummy. Yes, yes, I'm silly. I'm really scared. She said this quietly, matter of fact. And it was then that Nora looked at her, really properly looked at her. The girl seemed wholly alien and wholly familiar all at once. Nora felt a swell of something inside her, something powerful and worrying. The girl was staring at her in a way no one had stared at her before. It was scary, the emotion. She had Nora's mouth, and that slightly lost look that people had sometimes attributed to her. She was beautiful, and she was hers, or kind of hers, and she felt the swell of irrational love, a surge of it, and knew if the library wasn't coming for her right now, and it wasn't, that she had to get away. Mummy, will you hold my hand? The girl put her hand in Nora's. It felt so small and warm, and it made her feel sad the way it relaxed into her as natural as a pearl in a shell. She pulled Nora towards the adjacent room, the girl's bedroom. Nora closed the door, nearly shut behind her, and tried to check the time on her watch. But in this life, it was a classic-looking analog watch with no light display, so it took a second or two for her eyes to adjust. She double-checked the time on her phone as well. It was 2:32 a.m. So depending when she had gone to bed in this life, this version of her body hadn't had much sleep. Certainly felt like it hadn't. What happens when you die, Mummy? It wasn't totally dark in the room. There was a sliver of light coming in from the hallway, and there was a nearby street lamp that meant a thin glow filtered through the dog-patterned curtains. She could see the squat rectangle that was Nora's bed. She could see the silhouette of a cuddly toy elephant on the floor. There were other toys, too. It was a happily cluttered room. Her eyes shone at Nora. I don't know, Nora said. I don't think anyone knows for sure. She frowned. This didn't satisfy her. This didn't satisfy her one bit. Listen, Nora said. There's a chance that just before you die, you'll get a chance to live again. You can have things you didn't have before. You can choose the life you want. That sounds good, but you don't have to have this worry for a very long time. You're going to have a life full of exciting adventures. There will be so many happy things, like camping. A burst of warmth radiated through Nora as she smiled at the sweet girl. Yes, like camping. I love it when we go camping. Nora's smile was still there, but she felt tears behind her eyes. This seemed a good life, a family of her own, a daughter to go on camping holidays with. Listen, she said, as she realized she wasn't going to be able to escape the bedroom anytime soon. When you have worries about things you don't know about, like the future, it's a very good idea to remind yourself of things you do know. I don't understand, the girl said, snuggled under her duvet as Nora sat on the floor beside her. Well, it's like a game. I like games. Shall we play a game? Yes, smiled her daughter. Let's. You see how long the game is. Game looks still pretty long. Huh? Do you want me to stop or go on?
I kind of want to know what happens in this life. I don't know how many more sections it is to get through it, That's the
I
question.
know. I know.
There's enough. I mean,
There's plenty to talk about there for sure.
could have stopped at the, Pearl
Yeah,
right at the beginning even. But yeah, I mean, whatever you'd like to do.
we better stop or we won't have any time for talking because it's already 5 minutes till 10 here.
Gosh.
Gotta have lots of time for talking.
Yeah.
What's
Well, now
interesting.
she's got a kid. Ooh,
Right?
that's a whole
Is
new
this
ball game.
is this the first time well, as far as we know, I mean, unless she's landed in a life in one of those one random lives they didn't really tell about.
Yeah, she mentioned that she had experienced other lives where she was a mom, but she really didn't see her child, and that it scared her a little bit. I find it interesting how it's affecting how she interacts in the life. Just her knowing or feeling like she's out of place, like she doesn't belong even in the same body because it's a different life, like she's unworthy or something, or out of place, somehow, and it affects her decisions.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how she kind of like was trying to not necessarily interact with the child for fear of something. It's like for fear of getting sucked in, I don't know, or for fear she's going to disappoint the child or the child's going to know something's up, or, I'm curious about that, or she's.
Or knowing how to react with the child.
Or like in that one life where she interacted with someone else who was also experiencing different lives.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, the person would know something's up, or
Mm-hmm.
the child's already picking up on something that she, is talking different or something like that. But goodness, yes.
Children are such great teachers. Like, it'll be interesting now. She's already started teaching. So you normally learn the most when you teach. So she'll learn her lessons by teaching them to the kid.
Mm-hmm. I feel like she's done that a couple of different times, like when she had to stand up in front of the crowd and then she ended up saying a really profound statement to herself or to them, but it was really to herself. And I think she did that a couple of times where she had to talk to somebody and share something about her life, where she was in an interview at one point. Another time she was up on stage. Maybe that was all the same life. I can't remember, but yeah. Isn't that funny though, how when that is kind of like our biggest learning moments is when we say something that we think and then we're like, huh. Although I've learned a lot when I hear things that you guys say too, but it is kind of funny how just speaking something out loud has a heavier density in our psyche or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you learn something about yourself with every interaction, I think. Sometimes it's like starting a cold engine, though. You haven't been interacting for a while, and you might have to take a couple pulls on the cord to get it running. It was interesting to me. It seems as though she's looking for, when we were talking a little bit last time about like finding a purpose, and it's interesting because it seemed like she's still kind of looking for that connection, where before it seemed like she was more interested in finding out how her actions changed other people's lives, kind of like feeling guilty that or worried that her choices affected the lives of her family members and people she loved. And now it's more about the purpose and the connection, I guess, is the way I can put it. What say ye?
Yeah, it was interesting, kind of like at the beginning of the Lost in the Library section where she was saying she felt, she says she felt ungrateful. She says, I've run out of lives, I've been everything, and yet I always end up back here. There's always something that stops my enjoyment. I feel ungrateful. And I feel like that's a big key in life, really, is to, in order to be happy, you have to be grateful for something. I feel like, I mean, because if we are unhappy, it's generally because we're dissatisfied with whatever random thing is happening in our lives or has been happening or whatever. And when we change our attitude towards being grateful, then we have a happier experience. So I think that's something interesting. But then also when she was talking about, she just says, I just don't understand life. And then the librarian was like, well, you don't have to understand it. You just have to live it. And that's kind of I feel like that's a big thing to have to accept, is that we don't have to understand everything. Because I think human nature is a thing, is we just have this innate desire to discover and learn and understand things. And if life doesn't require you to understand anything, it's kind of a different mind shift. I mean, I guess in a lot of ways that's true. You don't have to understand it. I mean, you look at the animals; they don't have to understand anything. They're just living and experiencing, and they're just being. And we are always trying to find meaning in everything. And I feel like maybe some of the time that pursuit for meaning is part of our dissatisfied feelings, or we have dissatisfaction because we are finding meaning in things that isn't necessary to find meaning in, and maybe we're finding the meaning because we're focused on the wrong thing, and so then we find this unpleasant meaning of things, whereas we don't have to, and I think that's an interesting concept to look at. I don't know, do we have to have meaning in everything? What would it be like if we weren't trying to find meaning in everything?
Yeah, or at least judging the acceptance of it, or our worthiness, or judging it somehow, instead of just receiving it and sort of amplifying it. Maybe we're like tuning forks and able to generate this energy, but maybe we're also like the biggest, best example of a biological resistor in the universe, where we have this ability to halt the energy just the same, and to accidentally or out of a misunderstanding build this energy up in us, and then either force it to dissipate within us or unleash it at some time, either on purpose or not on purpose. I mean, if everything's energy, then you think of it that way. It does seem that she's wrestling with the idea a bit about her her being deserving of something. And I've been hearing quite a bit about how, even if you're trying to, I mean, you can call it manifesting, or if you're just trying to reach your goals, get to the goal, how often we get to the point where we could actually obtain that which we want, but we are out of alignment and not able to receive it, not able to accept it, because maybe we feel like we didn't do enough yet to get it, to achieve it. Like it should be more difficult, or it should be this or that, the other, but always judging what it, what it is, and how we should, how receptive we should be to it, and whether we're deserving of it.
I think we're worthy, whether we know it or not. We're here.
We were born worthy, right?
We were definitely born worthy. But like you said, a lot of people are programmed from childhood. I mean, it's one of the main issues that humans have just across society, is feeling unworthy or unloved or invisible. Or I can't imagine where we would get that idea. Like we're all nice and comfortable, and then all of a sudden we get like crushed and then spit out into the cold, and there's like all these bright lights and people doing shit to us.
Yeah.
And then, all the stuff that comes after that, they get shots, and poor little boys get circumcised. And I mean, for years and years, and still to this day, some doctors don't use an anesthetic for that. They just do it. And I don't know why we would get strange feelings about things here on this planet. But you're right, Samantha. Like when animals, if a leopard is chasing a gazelle and the gazelle manages to get away, they just kind of stand up and shake it off and go on about their business. They don't go into therapy over it for the next 35 years, you know, like, like we do. Or try to figure out what they did to provoke that attack, or any of that. They literally stand up, shake it off physically, which that is shaking is something that people need to do every day. That's like something that they teach in Qigong, and probably Tai Chi. I've never taken Tai Chi officially, but I know in Qigong they teach you to shake, because it really releases stuck energies in your body and gets things flowing well. So even if you just like bounce up and down on your toes, or just shake your hands like you know, just
I'm
shake all.
sorry. I beg to differ. I mean, this shaking hasn't helped me one bit.
Well, maybe you just have such powerful energy, you have to shake like that to expel it. You'll have
I have
to focus that into healing or something like that and see if that changes that.
too
Maybe,
much.
maybe you need to shake more on purpose to shake
Yeah,
out the shakes.
yeah, shake out the
Shake out the
back.
shakes. Like kids, it's like they have all
Yeah,
this excess energy inside them and they just, they're like acting out, their whole bodies are out of control, until they purposefully shake it
exactly.
all out or run it out or scream it out or whatever, get the
Yeah,
giggles out. It's like the other day with the kids, we were they were like so full of energy and it was raining outside and I was like, all right, we got to do something, so I was like, all right, let's play a
Have
game,
a
and
laugh
so
party.
yeah, it was just a be silly party, and I was like, all right, get your feet shakes, your feet wiggles out, and they'd wiggle their feet, and I was like, all right, now your knees, let's wiggle your knees, and then let's shake our butts, and let's do our, shake our heads and do all that. So we did that for like 30 minutes of just continuous shaking and wiggling and all kinds of stuff, and then I was like, all right, now let's try doing the quiet game and see what happens, and they were much calmer. I'm like, so I think we get that pent up energy. But I was reminded when you were talking, Catherine, about the qigong and the shaking, and that it's what athletes do when they're all wound up. They'll shake their body, shake their arms, shake their legs and stuff. So yeah, I think we do get. I don't know.
Shake all that stuck
Shake
stuff
it
out.
out. Shake out the stuck stuff, right? That's a good point, though, with the animals that they just shake it off. Although I was watching another movie this week. What was it called? Megan Levy, I think it was like based on a true story of a woman Marine who ended up with a dog, and they were, out bomb sniffing in Iraq or whatever. And then when the dog came back to here, it was traumatized from all of that. And so I think that I think even though animals can shake off a lot, like what you were saying, Catherine, they don't go into therapy after being attacked by another animal, but at the same time, they do have a memory of that, and that helps them survive the next time. So there's an aspect of it that just shake it off, and then another aspect of survival too. So mm,
yeah. My dogs both had like PTSD from some things that they went through. They definitely, they don't always just shake it off, but it helps.
Well, it's like if you adopt an abused dog, it's gun shy and doesn't always, act like a real regular puppy or what a dog, because make a sudden move and it freaks out.
Yeah, and I kind of do believe that, it's sort of it's sort of been built into our coding over the years, over the millions of years, um, to be better at shaking things off. Except that in just the last, you know, 200-300 years, so many new, eh, so many new stressors have come about that our ancestors didn't have a way of learning to cope with. So we're continuing, in a way, if you think of it in linear terms, possibly we're continuing the learning experience for um, our genetic makeup for all of our all of the humanity to come. Um, Hopefully, not learning to be completely numb to everything, but learn to deal with things a little bit better. Definitely learning
That's
about our
true.
lives.
But then think about all the things that we don't have to overcome, like cavemen did or whatever. So we've graduated or continuation, whatever, through different circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like maybe like the Neanderthals they reacted from the vibrations from the sounds of a T-Rex in the area running around, and like, oh, I hear the footsteps, and we don't get so much of that anymore. But now we're, different sound stimuluses that we have to be ready for and to react correctly to. Being able to triangulate where a sound is coming from and not run directly into the train, or whatever it might be, and by accident. So, but with all this, with all that to seemingly to worry about, why not let that go and be accepting of all the good things that can come our way, be open to that, be in alignment with receiving that, and be in alignment with asking for good things, focusing on good things, choosing to be, have that frequency of choosing to be happy, choosing to be joyful, choosing to be peaceful and understanding and caring instead of being agitated and or frustrated or feeling unworthy, but giving yourself that choice. It's like the other day I was a little bit frustrated in the morning, but I had this notion. I've been listening to this audio, and it's something kind of like that. Talks about choose this, choose that, choose, and 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 then I had this kind of thought, like, let me just take this frustration and put it up on the shelf where I have these other choices of what I could choose to like a suit I could wear. Let me choose to wear the suit of joy instead of this suit of frustration. you know that was But it's funny, I actually had that the other morning, and but yeah, I think we have the choice to really. And sometimes it feels like it's so difficult to pull ourselves out of an emotion, especially when it's sadness or despair or frustration or irritation that from something outside of us. Like, and we're like, it's not my fault, it's their fault, or it's that thing's fault. And okay, then let it go and just choose to be in a different emotional vibration. Don't even let it go. Just choose to allow that better vibration to overpower it, if you want to think of it that way, or set it on the shelf for later when you have, when you can look at it from a different perspective. But anyway,
Sometimes you just want to put it in a lockbox that never comes out again.
there you go. Do that. Do that. But I feel like, don't leave yourself empty with no emotion. Go ahead and grab some joy, grab some love, grab a little bit of excitement, exhilaration, whatever it is. I always like to think of, like, I was like, how do I cultivate the feeling of joy like I had as a kid? And there's two things that I've figured out come to my mind. One was being attacked by a bunch of little puppies, You know, like when you lay on, you like when there's a bunch of little puppies and you like sit on the ground and they all climb up on top of you, start licking your face and stuff, and you're like, ah, yeah, you know, and that's just like that's a fun event, and then the other was like when you're playing as a kid and you're being chased by your friend or so being pursued by someone who loves you or being that as another way of cultivating that positive energy or that emotional feeling that puts you in a different state of mind. Puppies.
Yeah, I like that idea of, putting your unpleasant feeling suit up in the shelf and pulling down a happy suit. I like that. That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, or a jar of
Yeah.
of love.
Uh-huh.
I was
Yeah. I got a different flavor of coffee this morning, okay? I'm not going to choose my grumpy coffee. I'm going to choose my happy coffee. The one that fills me up with joy and happiness. I'm going to start doing that. Like when
What'd
I
you
go
buy
to,
the grumpy coffee for?
well, I don't know. Maybe it was just like I pulled it off the shelf and I didn't realize it was a bag of grumpy coffee. I don't know. I need to dump it in my jar that says a happy coffee. Although most of the time I do when I drink my coffee, it always is like oh yeah, that's a happy feeling. So I need to
Yeah.
remember to
I was listening to, oops, sorry.
go ahead. Yeah, no, I was done.
I was listening to Greg Braden the other day, and he was talking about, we've come to a point in history, things are happening now that have been prophesied for millennia. And he said he felt that there was a time when we could have changed the way that we're going. He's not sure with the recent events if that's going to happen or if we're just on another trajectory now. But he was at, basically his point of the whole thing was, who do you become in the face of adversity or um, that all these things happening in our world right now, we don't have much control over a lot of them, and that can make you feel very hopeless or uh, depressed or whatnot because you don't feel like you have control over anything. But he was reminding people that you have control over who you become in the face of those events. In other words, um, do you become focused on all of the negative stuff, or do you choose your suit of joy and happiness, and you choose your suit of kindness and helping your neighbor, and you choose your suit of um, having hope and spreading love and trying to help humans communicate on whatever level you can. Some people can do that on a broad scale because they have, they're influencers or whatever. And there's a lot of people out there doing that. But like, are you going to choose to let the current events, devastate you all day, every day? Because you could, if you just are on the TV all day on the news. But there's still so much good that can be done, and we never know where the tipping point is. If we all just keep doing good deeds, not just good deeds. I don't mean it that way. I think you guys know what I'm trying to say, but if we
Yeah.
choose the right path, if we make that choice on a daily basis and just do the next right thing, I guess, um, we never know. We can tip the scale or maybe not, but it makes a difference. His point was it makes a difference on a spiritual level, even if you think it's not good, that what you're doing doesn't make a difference on the physical level, or you feel like you have no control over things and you can't help anybody or do anything because maybe you can't even help yourself. But what you're doing through your word or even your prayer and your thoughts that you hold, that makes a difference to the world as a whole because we're all connected, and it makes a difference spiritually. It makes a difference in our, if you believe that we come here to learn, what greater lesson can you learn than to be love in the face of adversity? So it was a pretty good thing. I'll share it in our chat thing on Facebook if you guys want to. It wasn't too
Oh,
long.
absolutely.
Okay.
I totally, I agree with you, Catherine, for sure. That's, and I was kind of thinking as we're discussing this, it isn't, it isn't missed on me that, when you're in the trenches of it, that when you've lost a loved one or, a tragic thing has happened, that you're just, you're overcome with sadness and distraught and destroyed, and that feeling, that mourning and all that is so real and so deep and everything. And even after time goes by, the mourning continues, and you still kind of feel like you still need to mourn, and you still are sad and feel all that, and so it can be difficult to think to understand how you're supposed to be happy or be joyful and move um, the only way, having gone through some of that, the only way I can think of it is that like my loved one appreciates the love and the mourning and the sadness and me missing them and all that, and having gone through that, but that them having passed on don't want us to miss out on the rest of our lives, and they want us to find joy, and they want us to 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 go on. And it's not that that by doing that it isn't lessening our love for them or um, anything like that. We're not forgetting them or putting them out of our minds or out of our hearts at all. It's in fact in fact knowing that they would want us to be happy and to feel joy in life and to go on and love and live and do, you know, have a life and do more, be more, and be happy in our life and not to be sad all the time. That sort of can even, for me, if I allow it, allows me to fuel that push to want to choose joy and to choose happiness and to send love out into the universe and um, to truly um, to truly um, in a very real way send out positive energies and be that spark of of light and joy and happiness whenever possible, and in doing so in a way being doing it kind of for them as well as for ourselves, and knowing that it has a positive effect on everyone else around us and out there. So just wanted to add that, but I completely agree with what you were saying.
I think he was, I don't think he was, I think well, you'll see when you watch it, but I think what he's basically saying, because there's a lot of people out there right now with all the division, there's like division amongst everything. And people are getting vicious with each other everywhere over the least. Like people are just losing their humanity right now. And they are, I think that's what he was pointing to is how are you going to let all of this, who are you going to let it turn you into? You know, are you going to let it turn you into that hate that they're expressing towards each other? Or are you going to, I mean, we need each other as humans. Like we can't, um, you know, being human is not a solitary event. So we kind of have a choice. We can either learn to live with each other somehow, some kind of way, or we can extinguish our race. Because when it gets, when the tensions get too much, then they're just too much. And I'm sure that's how we've wiped ourselves out many times before. But everybody was kind of hopeful that this time we were going to actually pull it off. We were going to figure it out. Right now, it's not really looking like that, but that doesn't mean we can't turn it around. Like, I'm very hopeful. And I know, you know, our loved ones, they know how much we love them. And and they are here with us. We just don't see them, like, but they're right here with us. So they see all that sadness and all that grief. And there is certainly, you have to do that. You have to, because when you hold all that in, it just destroys your body and stuff. So you have to have that grief. And, but at the same time, there comes a point where if you can just realize that they're still here with you and you can just talk to them and converse with them just like they're standing there next to you, um it that grief can turn into happiness because you realize there's really no distance or space between you, and the only difference is that they don't have a physical body anymore. That's the only thing. So they're helping us all the time, all the time. And of course they don't want us to I mean they don't get offended like that you're not acknowledging that they're there because they understand that most people don't get that. um, but they're very happy when people can get over their grief, can move through their grief and get back to their key. They, because they're watching us and they love for us to be happy, just like we would watch someone that's still in body here. And you know, when our friend is sad, we get sad. When our friends are happy, you know, we're joyful. And that's, you know, that's how they are with us. So of course sometimes you don't even want to think about that they're always with us. They're not watching the private stuff, but you know, it is kind of creepy sometimes when I think about how many, because I've got a few that I just routinely talk to throughout the day, you know, that I know are just always around me. But then when I start thinking about all the other ones, I'm like, oh my goodness, the room is full here.
Oh, wow.
No, Dad, you can't be here right now.
Right?
I always just laugh about some of that though too, because I'm like, you know, my dad, you know, I mean, he just passed away a couple years ago, and some of the things that I talk to him about now, I could have never talked to him about, before, because he just, all of our baggage that we carry around as humans, and all our relationship mumbo jumbo and whatnot. And, Chris and I were talking not that long ago. I was like, if something happened to me or something happened to him, I'm like, we'd still be here for each other. It would just be a different dynamic, because we'd let all this bullshit that we have between us that is mumbo jumbo crap, it would just be gone. And we could have, like, real, not that we don't have real conversations now, but the stuff that we avoid talking about now because it, pushes our buttons or whatever, we totally talk about it. And I'm like that with my dad. I have conversations, things will come up that I know would flare my dad up over this, that, or the other. And we just laugh about it now because it's just funny. It's so funny, this human mumbo jumbo that we allow to cloud our ability to really see what is happening in the world or happening with other people in our lives, and sure, I miss some things about my dad, but then at the same time, I am we have a whole different, conversations now that are free and clear of bullshit, and but yet at the same time, we'll have things will come up on TV. My dad was a huge Stallone fan, and that there's some new Stallone TV show that came on, and I'm not a big Stallone person. I mean, and he was like over here going, "You got to watch that," and I'm like, "Dad, I am not watching that show just so you could see it," But it was just silly things like that, I mean. I don't know. Well, he came up for Chris. Chris was down in Georgia this last couple of weeks, and what was it? He came across something. Oh, right. His uncle loves watching the classic movie channel, like the old westerns and stuff like that. And so apparently my dad was there with Chris, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I miss watching this stuff too," And so he's giggling about that. And, it's funny. It's so funny. I mean, we are so, I don't know, when we're in the human form, we're just so much more emotional and full of all this, um like Nora, the regrets and the shoulda coulda wouldas and ought tos, and and all of that kind of thing. And then, particularly when we're dealing with other people in our family. And I it's like I have, one of my brothers who's got a lot of anger in him from things that happened when he was a kid that he just wasn't happy about. And I can understand that. And, we get together and we'll get on random topics about this, that, or God only knows what. And he has so much just forceful, angry energy over certain topics. And and yet I also know that he's got this spiritual being part of himself that doesn't have any of that, and when I can kind of communicate to him knowing that there's this other part of him that is not this human angry person, then he doesn't trigger the bullshit in me, and the same thing like with my mom. There are things in our relationship from when we were younger that I could have all kinds of resentment and anger and frustration and blah blah about, and yet, I keep remembering that's just her human self, and that the underlying or over above or whatever we want to call it, that the soul aspect or spiritual aspect of every person is a neutral. They have this neutral, just happy go lucky, everything's good, it all serves a purpose kind of attitude. And we can just giggle about this mumbo jumbo in our lives, that we take so seriously. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Even in like the states where things are relatively peaceful and consistent and all that, but at the same time, I do realize in other countries where they're at war, and they've got these deep seated beliefs, and we've got this spiral of negativity going on, and it's difficult to find any peace and joy in when your environment's destroyed all around you. So that's that is doesn't go over my head, but I it's like what's sad is that there, even amongst that, there are people that choose peace, and yet there are people around them who don't, and continue the violence and the negativity in spite of others of their own side wanting peace. And that's what's really sad, is that not everybody is choosing to be better and to to let go of the ill feelings and for a better future. And it's maybe only a small fraction of the good people that are messing it up for everybody else, but it's having a huge devastating effect, and it's really sad. It's my heart goes out to all of them everywhere around the world who's in a situation like that.
Absolutely. How do we resolve all the feuds of the Hatfields and McCoys?
Basically what it is, right? I don't have the answers, other than it has to come from within, and people choosing to not escalate things, say enough is enough. So they have good reasons to be upset and to be angry, but it's they also have that choice. It's just very difficult.
So much of it is posturing, and so much of it is money driven. War makes a lot of money, makes some people a lot of money.
There's that too. Yeah. And it's difficult to think in terms of peace and happiness and joy and getting along with others and accepting people who you're not used to being able to accept, and when it only takes one person now in this world to cause so much anguish, and so that it makes it even more difficult to be at peace and to let your guard down and to be accepting.
Well, I mean, it's challenging. This household, within the next week, we'll have from age 13 to 92. So it's challenging just to live with your own family that you love. And not to say that we're bickering or anything, but, all of us have to make concessions for this to work. And it's not always concessions that you want to make. Like, so it can be challenging sometimes, but it's also in how you're looking at it too. But my point is, we want peace, but it's even challenging. Even the simplest of things, it seems, are challenging. When you're talking about these feuds that have been going on for thousands and thousands of years, and nobody even knows what the feud is over anymore at this point, probably. I mean, the end of the ham has been cut off, and the pan has been plenty big the whole time. They're still cutting the end of the ham off because that's the way it's always been done. Like, you won't understand that if you haven't heard that story, but I'm sure everybody has. But it's still it is a spiritual war, as well as a physical war. And, what the real war is, are you going to retain your humanity or not? And that's just a choice that everybody has to make personally, regardless of what circumstances they find themselves in. It's a choice that we make daily with any interaction that we have with another human being or animal or plant or anything. Um, and it's just choice by choice and day by day. And I pray that enough people choose peace. I really do. This is a beautiful, beautiful planet with just everything is so amazing here. It really is heaven right here. Um, so I surely hope that somehow this gets reeled in somehow, some kind of way. I mean, if not, I guess we'll find ourselves on another planet trying to do it again. But I really like this one. I really love
I'm
this one.
with you.
And I really love, we have so many just incredible things here. There's so much to be grateful for, and people and adventures, the nature, just a flower. I mean, it's just amazing. And our bodies are amazing, and our bodies are really amazing. Like, that's the thing. We don't even understand the simplest of things, and yet entire civilizations are threatening each other's lives. We have so far to go as humans, but we've come a long way. Look how far we've come. There's so much. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to talk about the things that we talk about at one point. We'd have been burned as witches or something by now, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's important for us all to have forgiveness. We share this world, this universe, have forgiveness. And when we are shown forgiveness, have mercy and peace, extend ourselves to those who give us forgiveness, extend peace and look for harmony and choose to give forgiveness back and then to focus, really put in the work to focus on the positive possibilities, the positivity in the moment, any positive, even if it's just a shred, and work there from it and amplify only good things. Help others who are having a difficult time with that, being able to do that. Show them the way, give them reason, whatever it may be. Share that forgiveness and acceptance and project peace and love into the world whenever you can.
Well said.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Bless you all.
Love you.
Everybody have a great week. Just remember, always keep your focus on what you want, not what you don't want. So I'm looking for peace and happiness, y'all. I love you.
Love you too.
Take care, everyone. Have a great
All right.
day.
I guess we'll wrap it
Hasta
up then. Yeah, hasta luego. Hasta la vista. All right, guys. Have a great, awesome, amazing week. And for those of you who are watching, if you found this useful, please give us a like on YouTube and share this video with anybody you think would find it helpful. And if you'd like to join the conversation, we'd love to have you. You can find a link below the video to join our Facebook group. And, actually, I think I even put the link to the Facebook post that gives you the link to get into this Zoom meeting room. So it's the same link every week. So, all right, that's it for today. Have a great, awesome, amazing week. We'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.